Good tidings, all you beautiful individuals. It is another epi of League Unlock. Eric and Mark here with you beauties. And so often, we look historically at Worlds teams' performances. We're usually talking biggest disappointments, biggest choke on the international stage. But today, we're looking at the positive side of things. We're talking most overachieving or overperforming teams that we have had over the history of the World Championship. There's a lot you could pick from, but we got our top 5 plus an honorable mention.
There's two ways to look at this one. Glass half full, glass half empty. You can look at the teams, the players, the accomplishments on this list and say, yeah, but then nothing ever got to that type of level for the players, for the organization, and be that negative side. Or we're going to do this one. We're going to stay on that full side. We're going to look at it in the positives, and we're going to say, yes, there's still some things to look at negatively in retrospect, but absolutely this is an achievement, and we got to be celebrating these type of runs at Worlds.
And one region we're so used to talking about time and time again on those glass half empty disappointing runs is the LCS. But today, that honorable mention just outside the top 5 is 2018 Cloud9 and their run to the semifinals, because you remember this wasn't the top seed from the LCS that we were hyped about seeing on the international stage. This was the play-in journey, and a team that needed 5 games to even qualify for the main stage against Gambit. They end up surviving in the group of death with RNG, the Golden Road, and Genji. They end up somehow getting out and even 3-0ing the Africa Freaks in quarterfinals.
Oh my God, 2018 Cloud9. We are talking about rookie of the split, Mr. Licorice, coming through for the C9 faithful. This is a long time ago, but yes, this Cloud9 team, this is where you start to see, and again, the full continuation of that historic Cloud9 last hope at Worlds for NA. They make sure they get it done. They were absolutely not the team that I think anybody was looking to count on from North America to make any type of noise at this World Championship. And of course, they reached the heights of semifinals, top 4 for NA. Who'd have think it?
No one, absolutely no one, was talking about them getting out of this group. It was how many games can you win, and then going on to be the only LCS team to win a best of 5 against an LCK squad. And you can say whatever you want about the performances of the Africa Freaks on this international stage, but a 3-0 in the way of the LCS to get to semifinals, and then crazy that the tournament just ended at semifinals. Nothing happened after that.
Yeah, strange. I don't remember anything about what happened to Cloud9 after semifinals, but the journey to that point, of course, a very exciting one for North American fans, as you mentioned before, all the way through, staving off that elimination through those play-ins and leveling up to find a way to actually, probably most people had them favorited, slightly edged out over the Africa Freaks. That's also a statement about where Africa was at the time. But yes, Cloud9 2018, certainly one for North American fans to remember.
And number 5 on this list, we're going to 2017, which is some painful memories, especially for LCS squads. But again, we're going to the group of life, but we are looking at the positive side of things, and that is Misfits, the 2nd seed from the LEC. They were fresh off getting 3-0 smacked by G2 in these summer finals, and then they surprised. Yes, TSM was bad in this group, but Misfits absolutely showed up, did what the LCS could not, winning a tiebreaker, and then of course this real overperformance hype comes in those quarterfinals against SKT. The Blitzcrank pick the Leona, forcing Game 5 and giving SKT absolutely all they could handle.
It's incredible to look back on this 2017 Misfits run and realize that, throughout kind of the first week or so of that play-in stage, played to what the expectations were for this team. A lot of people saw that there were these glimpses that if they get their type of draft, they get to perform the way that they want to play, they can control the game, and they can be someone that you have to worry about out there on the Rift. Not doing it consistently enough. Week 2, you see that turnaround. You get enough of the big power games. You get that clutch performance. Of course, and of course the non-clutch performance factor for the LCS in the tiebreaker games, and you move on through. And as you mentioned, you get to this run where you go to that matchup against SKT, and you better believe this one, T1 fans, this was a Misfits victory, almost all wrapped up, except they got a little too greedy at the crucial moment.
Yeah, that was even in game 4 that they were in the driver's seat to close this game, the series out. And this kind of set the precedent because obviously Misfits were massive underdogs against the 2-time defending world champions. But you saw break the meta. That's what you do as an underdog. 2017 is this gross ardent sensor meta, and then Q Ignar popping in the Blitzcrank, catching out Faker time and time again, and the Fervor Leona to dominate the 2v2. You can't play standard against teams that are just better than you.
And I know that a lot of my friends that are support mains, they've got a special spot in their heart for this 2017 Misfits team because of those creative picks coming through. And obviously, as you mentioned, Ardent Sensor, boring, stale, disgusting meta. And you have Ignar sticking true to the type of player he is, taking these engaged supports, being aggressive, being on that line, and getting it done, being the difference maker for the Misfits to get these wins, to push T1 all the way to the brink. It is so good to look back on this roster and see those strengths. You see the control mages from Power of Evil, something he built his whole career around. Alfari being that solid option in that top side. And of course, with Ardent Sensor, we all know Mr. Hans Sama getting hyped up, getting pumped up with the damage. That was the secret for the Misfits.
And even more impressively, this is the split or the year where Alfari and Hans Sama are rookies making their international debut. They were making their LEC debut just earlier in the spring split. So Misfits, the two opposite ends, TSM leveling down internationally, Misfits leveling up. Sorry, LCS fans. We had to bring up TSM in this group in tandem with what we got out of Misfits in that same year, going way, way back. I'm talking way, 10 years for number 4 on this list. Most people were probably not even able to play video games. They were too young when this was going on. 2012, the Taipei Assassins, they were underdogs in every single matchup they had. They did not have to go through that group stage as they were the first seed from the then, I don't even remember what the LMS was called in 2012, but Najin Shield with Mach Noon, who was incredibly hyped up, Moscow 5, which were one of, if not the best teams in the world at the time, and then the Korean Masters, Azubu Frost. All 3 of these best of matchups, Taipei Assassins were underdogs and discounted, and they won every single one.
One of the most incredible runs that we have ever seen at a World Championship event. Yes, this is the one that I go to a lot of players that have just recently come into the game, recently gotten into the professional type of scene, and saying, go back. This is one of those ones that you got to have in that type of knowledge, in that type of history, to see what can happen, what type of run an underdog can fully achieve in League of Legends. The Taipei Assassins is exactly that type of story.
And if you go back and do watch these highlights, just make sure you got the nostalgia glasses on, because the graphics are a little ugly from season 2.
Absolutely not. Maybe not the game that you're remembering or seeing right now. Certainly not the 200 years of Riot game design that we are seeing right now. But you turn back that clock and you are seeing these Taipei Assassins make this type of run. As you mentioned, Najin Shield going up against Abuzu Frost, and what they had to do, how favorited those teams were at the time, how accomplished they were up against these Taipei Assassins. Really is one of the most incredible runs we've seen.
And remember, season 2 is when you had more of these international IEM type events, or IPL, where you were seeing, it wasn't just Worlds MSI International, it was throughout the year. You saw squads like Azubu Frost, saw squads like Moscow 5 already dominating international competition. The LMS was still so new. The Taiwanese scene was so new compared to some of these other ones that I don't think people fully knew what they were expecting. But when these boys hit the rim, we knew what we were getting. This was your first installment of the World Skins, and they've come a long way from what we got out of the TPA ones.
They certainly have. I've got a special spot in my heart for the TPA skins because of obviously their underdog run. I like a couple of champions that go through. That Oriana one looks okay. You got Mundo throwing the actual Summoners trophy.
And they've been updated recently. They do look better now.
They do look better now, yeah, but absolutely a little dated. But man, still one of the very best moments that we look back at Worlds is this run from TPA, and it's still one that is mentioned anytime you're getting it upset at Worlds. It's referenced back to the run the TPA was able to make as well. One of the most iconic underdog runs we've seen in League of Legends.
The iconic one for the LMS, the iconic overperformance for a wildcard region as a whole is 2016 Albus Knox. They were able, I mean, this is the era where you are shocked, impressed if a wildcard team picks up a single win against a major region. Albus Knox managed to take a game and force a tiebreaker against one of the overall tournament favorites in the Rocks Tigers, while simultaneously embarrassing both the LCS and the LEC.
Oh man, take you back to an era before TSM has to stretch themselves out against GAM Esports, before the LCS starts struggling, before the Mad Lions are dropping out of play-ins. You had a squad like Albus Knox dismantling everybody through as one of these minor region squads. Unexpected killers coming across in this one in 2016. One of the most special runs throughout a group stage is this one from Albus Knox and what they were able to do here in North America for Worlds.
Obviously, the first wildcard team to make top 8, to get into that next round. They beat, as I mentioned, every team in the group. And it wasn't even just like some first week cheese. They only had, they had this support brand, the Anivia, which, I mean, was off meta for sure, but it's not like they were picking up cheap wins, especially in the G2 CLG matchups. They were straight up outplaying them across the board.
So much hype, so much excitement, and I love that one of the best things looking back on this type of run from Albus Knox was how instantly the community recognized this is the outlier, this is something special, this is crazy to see an underdog like this be able to challenge these teams, these organizations, this financial backing, these players, these stories that we have seen was one of the most special things that we have seen from this Albus Knox groups. I always remember their matchup against them Rocks Tigers and how they were able to take a game down. Come on, man. How many times do these, as the LCS or the LEC, find a way to take one away from a squad as hyped up as the Rocks Tigers were at the time?
Yeah, once every 3 years, maybe you get a win there. But yeah, that had the insane ending where back then people would be buying, I don't even remember what the item was that summoned these voidlings that the minions prioritize. So you're trying to, ZZ Rot, that's what it was.
Yeah,
so you're trying to defend your base with these, oh my God, Rocks Tigers next level strategy, but wasn't enough.
Wasn't enough for them. They obviously meet their fate against H2K later on. Of course, a nice little drawing for H2K is another thing to look at. And that's
but they made top 8, even though they got 3-0 slammed.
They absolutely did, and I know that things are a little different looking back in history at this one, but I still think bring yourself back to that moment, bring yourself into the 2016 World Championship, and have a look through this Albus Knox underdog run, and you will find a sparkle of some hope.
2018, it wasn't just Cloud9 that we were hyping up with this incredible, overperforming run that they went through. It was also the EU side of things. It was also the EU squad that had to go through play-ins. G2 Esports dropped a couple of games in play-ins, dropped a game to Fongvu Buffalo in the group stage, but were able to beat Flash Wolves in a tiebreaker to even make top 8, which was already leaps and bounds more than people were expecting out of them.
Way more than anyone expected from this G2 lineup, especially a G2 that's rolling in with Mr. Hajarnan and Wadid down in the bottom lane. This ain't no caps, perks run around of G2. This is the earlier era of that G2 dynasty in the LEC. And yes, they had to find themselves clawing trying to get out of that group stage at the very beginning. They do drop, of course, to Mr. Buffalo, continuing that trend for G2. But they find a way to get it done when it's clutch time against these Flash Wolves, setting up one of the most incredible moments, and I still will stand by this one in World's history, is of course that quarterfinals matchup against RNG and denying Uzi that golden road of the golden year.
Yeah, listen, if they get 3-0 in those quarterfinals, you probably still talk about this team maybe as an honorable mention on this list, but the fact that they beat the overall tournament favorites, and I know in hindsight we say, well, the meta really shifted away from the bot lane emphasis. I don't want to hear it, because G2 outplayed RNG, even though they had slowed down, needed a tiebreaker versus Cloud9 to secure that first seed. But the Heimerdinger permabans against Hjarnan, the wards on the lanterns out of Wadid, and then obviously the still probably best individual game 5 performance that we've seen maybe ever.
Yeah, big game perks stepping up in that game 5. You had, of course, all the way through this series, major contributions from the rest of the G2 squad finding their way to fight through to this game 5 and actually even have any type of foothold in this series, where you do think that, hey, game 5, it's up for grabs either type of way for this squad. But you could see that a little bit of tilt might have been building in your boy Uzi down in the bottom lane, frustrated to be challenged and pushed to the limit by a G2 squad, and it all comes to it in that game 5 with G2 with the full force, full attention onto Mr. President, making sure, yes, of course, everybody knows you see a Thresh Lantern, drop that ward on it, and you are gonna get some hate mail the next couple of minutes.
And now you see when people drop the lantern, you see 6 wards all pop up, and everyone's burning everything to make sure they can't click it. But Wadid really had Uzi's number throughout this whole game, and there was some fight back from RNG in that 5th game, but it was, I mean, Perks' LeBlanc was so disgustingly ahead. Obviously, much like Cloud9's run, we forget about what happened in the semifinals, but hey, they ran into the eventual world champions, and getting to semifinals, I think most people on G2 were already saying, check, what a great year.
People were, I do know there still was enough bubbling hype and excitement around the potential and how the solo laners played for G2. What could maybe happen if Hjarnan's Heimerdinger gets through, all these type of things. There still was a little bit. Not enough. It didn't matter when you roll up. When you roll up against the Shy and Rookie in the form that they were in 2018, you're not going to have your chances there. Slide in a little bit of Jackie Love to sprinkle it on top if you are IG. But yes, G2 in this 2018 year, I think should absolutely be celebrated for the run, the unpredicted, type of success they were able to generate through that group stage and hang on. And then, of course, the major upset against RNG.
And remember, another reason this is number 2 on this list. This is 2 years of G2 not getting out of groups. This isn't peak Dynasty G2, so expectations were at an all-time low for the squad. They were not as low as the number 1 team on this list, because DRX 2022 didn't even have expectations. You weren't even talking about, wow, maybe they could have a miracle run. We weren't even expecting them to get to Worlds. I know this is now a run that we have talked about ad nauseum, but it's just going to climb to number 1 on so many of these lists. And this is another one.
And it's only made stronger this year by the performances of these players, or I guess, lack thereof for the majority of these players. Once this roster separates away, and you do then have to bring it all back to look at that 22 year and realize what type of run this really was for DRX. Because let's remind you, this was absolutely a team that was pushed to that very brink, pushed to that limit, and almost eliminated not just once, but twice before they even get to the Worlds event.
Yeah, that's back-to-back game 5s in the regional finals to even qualify for the event. Then they would have 2 game 5s in the knockout round. So 4-0 in best of 5s, do or die, go home when you add it all up, going back to that regional gauntlet. And obviously, DRX, every stage of the way, was shattering expectations before we were finally feeling hype about the team. And I just said Perks' Game 5 against LeBlanc, maybe the best ever. Okay, maybe Zeka Silas in Game 5 might actually be the best individual run. But again, beat the defending world champions in EDG, beat the defending record-setting LCK champions in Gen G, and then beat Faker and T1 in the grand finals. This is not only the most difficult bracket you might ever see at Worlds, but it is from the most unlikely team.
It's such an incredible run throughout this world stage, and then you add in to boost up the story this is underperforming squad that finds a way to get it done in these big moments. You had DRX about midway through the year floundering down in about 6th, maybe 8th down apparently at some point in time in the LCK, going on these losing streaks, trying to sort it out. You didn't see these glimpses. And one of the biggest things here, the biggest overperformance that we have seen stretch up, level up on any player in this list so far is your boy Zeka in the mid lane, because he was nowhere near this type of level of impactful, this type of level of lethality in the mid lane. I don't know if we've ever seen someone say, I'm that type of guy, as strongly as Zeka did at this 2022 World Championship with these Akali performances, with these Mega Silas games. Zeka leading that 2022 charge.
Yeah, but he only did it against Scout, Chovy, and
right.
Faker. Like a bunch of nobodies, man.
Oh, yeah, we got to dial him up a couple LCS mid laners to get that.
Talk to me when you're doing it against Jensen and Niski, the real top dogs, man.
Hey, let's put some respect on Mr. I Don't Miss Worlds Jensen, okay? Let's remember that one here for it. But yes, 2022. DRX, the entire run throughout the year, the check-ins of they've got a little bit of potential, and then but they're running into these type of issues. This isn't working well for them. And you get to Worlds, they've made these incredible run through gauntlet, and then it just starts right away. You can feel the magic in their first matchup against RNG.
Maybe we'll have a crazier upset run from a team, but never will there be a more compelling storyline than what we got out of Deft and DRX in 2022. But that is it today for League Unlocked. My name is Eric, here with Mark and you guys. As always, thank you so much for joining us and watching, and we will catch you on that flippity flip.